Blue Antler is a liminal place. A place where knowledge lies in sun-filled meadows, and wisdom slumbers in the deepest shadows of the forest. Profound inner knowing comes when we touch the unknown. Our unions with the mysteries drive us onward. Our liminal conversations explore the lives of those who have touched the unknown. What was it like to experience the mysteries? How did they discover their path? Join my search for whispered secrets and hidden wisdom. Who knows? It may help you discover your path. Welcome back to another episode of Blue Antler, Whispered Secrets and Hidden Wisdom. Today's episode is going to be a conversation with my good friend, Andy. Andy and his husband own the Conjuring Tree, which is a spiritual metaphysical store in West Jordan, Utah. And it is also the place where I do in-person readings and we'll be doing some educating. So we've been friends for a long time and, what seems like a long time. And he has a great story to tell. So I invite you to sit back and let's dive into the mysteries. Okay. So I'm not going to start at the beginning, nor am I going to start at the end. We're going to start in not even the middle. But I know I have seen you encounter the unseen, the unknown, or the mysteries, specifically around doing readings and working with me. So, what the fuck was that like? Because I know you've had a couple instances where that's happened. So, what was that like?
Well, so with you, Ken, in particular, you're someone who I can take the time to kind of interpret certain individual feelings, certain things, and it makes it a little bit easier. So I guess it kind of helps to know a little bit about the way I do a reading in order to understand how I interpret feelings. So when I look at someone's energy, I tend to see connections. I see connections between yourself, between other people, between here and beyond, and those connections come across with feeling. Unfortunately, when you're getting a feeling, sometimes that isn't always clear. And so it takes a lot of time and effort to be like, okay, I'm feeling this energy. What the fuck was that?
I get that.
So for you in particular, a couple of times we have been in a reading and I have gotten this energy. Now I have been able to determine the energy that is different between a spirit guide, a loved one who has died, someone who is living. But with you in particular, you're probably one of the very first individuals that I felt a deity, which is such a trip because it's... how do you describe a deity, right? Or the energy of a deity? And for you in particular, I know that you follow the Norse traditions. And so I'm like, okay, which deity or which energy is this that I am feeling? The biggest one that I have had that took me for the longest time to ever feel was it was a very primal energy. It was wild, it was primal, it was exciting, but it was intense. And I could tell it wasn't a spirit guide. I could tell it wasn't an angel or anything like that. And so I'm like, it took me probably an hour to figure out what the hell I was feeling, because it wasn't just an animal, but it was animalistic. And so I went over and walked over to my little statue cabinet, and I'm like, wait, Odin has two wolves. And so I'm like, okay, Ken, what are their wolves' names? Because I'm like, what is this? Um, and we did eventually figure out that it was, I forget which wolf it was, but it was one of the wolves. I believe the names are like Greed and Hunger or something like that
Yeah.
of Odin's wolves. Based on the reading we were having, it was a hunger for knowledge or wisdom that we were seeking, and so it
Yeah.
was it was a very fascinating thing. Since that particular time, I have felt different deities for different individuals, and every time it's just a very overwhelming energy. I mean, it's usually a very strong message for the individual. Um, Myself personally, I don't have a deity I work with. I don't have a deity that I worship, and so I feel very honored that I am able to feel energy outside of an individual to help them like figure out who they're supposed to be or what they're supposed to get out of that. It's kind of
I
fun.
most of the time. Uh, huh,
Well, it's fun for me because I get to be the interpreter.
right, exactly. Uh, so thank you for going into that a bit. Um, Now we can go to the beginning,
Okay.
and I can ask you this.
Yeah.
Hey Andy, have you always had this
I'm
gift,
going to
or
say,
mm, when
well,
did all this
here's the
start?
problem. So I did grow up as a good little Mormon boy. So I was in the LDS church for 28 years of my life. And that is kind of difficult to kind of break away from. There's a very specific box that you're put into, and you're trying to force yourself to be in that very particular box. So anything outside of the information that you're given makes it really difficult to agree with or sense or feel. Now, for me, I have always had like a draw to magic in general. Now, I would say my very first like introduction to magic is definitely a fantasy novel, and for me, that was how I started. It was a great way for me to get introduced. One of the very first books that I read that made me think this is kind of cool is a book called The Circle of Magic. It was the very first book that talked about magic being used for the mundane things. So, um, growing a garden, or a stitch witch, or just these very simple things that we do in our everyday lives are magic. And that has always rung true for me. Like there's something magical in the mundane.
Oh, absolutely,
Um, and
absolutely.
so I think sometimes we forget that, or magic in general, or ritual, or whatever it mean whatever it is, needs to be this big explosive thing or this big powerful moment, when there is magic literally in waking up and brushing your teeth and doing the ritual of the everyday morning thing. Um, so from that, so once I got out of the church, once I kind of like broke down, came out as gay, there's a whole thing. Um, I was missing something. I was missing a part of myself. And when my husband gave me a tarot reading for the very first time, I'm like, this is cool. And I was drawn to that almost instantaneously. In fact, like probably the week after he gave me a tarot reading, I went and bought my first deck. um, I will say though, for me, there were a couple of big moments that kind of helped me kind of understand my gift. So when I first started doing readings, I learned from another one of our readers that one of my gifts come from touch. So being able to touch my cards and touch the individual or touch an item or an object, I tended to get more information out of those. So that really helped me begin. And so for me, touching my cards gives me information. It gives me emotions, images, words, things that kind of help me out. But since that point, since I've started using my gift more and more and more, what I am finding is I don't necessarily need the tools as much as I used to. I tend to get images, words, feelings. Conversations has been something that's been starting to up, and that's very fascinating to hear a conversation with people on the other side who are like yelling at the person I'm giving a reading to because they're trying to get a message across, and that person is just not listening.
That's a very fascinating it's fascinating, I think, to not only be able to experience the mysteries and the unknown, but when you are the bridge,
Hmm.
it is really fascinating. And let me ask you this before we get too far away from Mormonism.
Yes.
I've been thinking about this because you and I were I've known we were going to speak, for a while. And
Yeah.
I've been thinking to myself, self, did I have or do I remember having experiences touching the mysteries or the unknown within the context of Mormonism? So, for example, while you're thinking about this, for example, I always believed that it was very spiritual and very potent, and that going into the celestial room or going through the temple and going into the temple and moving into such a sacred space was I was able to touch the mysteries and have these profound experiences where they don't have to be. I agree with your mundane comment, by the way. I don't feel like they have to be earth shaking and groundbreaking to be the mysteries, but sometimes it's just this very small feeling
Hmm.
or very, very subtle thing. And I've been thinking back to all of my experiences within that religion, and maybe it's because I'm so fucking old, but I can't. I don't know that I can put my finger on one of those experiences. If you think about it, do you remember having those types of experiences like you have now in a different context, but within that religion?
There were definitely moments. So some of the things that I have been thinking about very much recently have been okay, what was that religion to me? Honestly, I felt more like a salesman in that religion than I felt like part of the religion. Um, there
I
was a
can see
lot of
that.
stress and anxiety of trying to be perfect and trying to make everything happen. Um, but for me, the power and the magic of like the temple or the showroom was the fact that it was a quiet place for me to get out of my own head.
I agree with that.
And that's, I
Agreed.
think, where most of that like inspiration, or if I had a deep question, um, it would come from like the quiet, the peace that I was able to give myself. But for me, like the temple ceremony in general, they were anxiety inducing
Because you have to remember things.
because I have to remember things and I have to do things in a very particular order. And part of my brain, it was just like, well, what if I get it wrong? It's not going to work. And so, like, my brain just did not like that. But there was a
Yeah.
sense of peace and relaxation that happened once you got into the temple or into the celestial room that I think was important.
I think I agree. I feel like there was one moment when it wasn't really working out for me anymore. Like I was having a really hard time fighting my sexual urges. Um, and
No.
I felt like, I know, right? What? Um, Never. Uh, I felt like I actually remember this very distinctly. I was in the Logan Temple and I'm in the celestial room. I had just done a session. I'm praying and I'm like, dear Jeebus, please take these feelings away from me. In our religion at the time, it's not okay to be, gay or sexual
Right.
or promiscuous or whatever. And if this is really what the deal is, like, take it away or tell me that this is something I have, like, give me some sort of sign that, okay, this is something I have to overcome. I hate that, by the way. Something I have to overcome, or you can take it away, and this is how it goes, because according to your fucking religion, this is not supposed to happen. And I sat in silence, the silence that you're talking about from the celestial room. And nothing, crickets, Bueller,
Yeah.
Bueller, Bueller, for any of you who can get that joke. And nothing happened. So that was the moment I decided that that was not, I needed to explore something else in life. So now you moved on from
Hmm.
the Mormon religion. And let me ask you,
Yeah.
when your husband gave you the tarot reading and you felt drawn to the tarot,
Um,
what did that feel like?
that's a hard question, but I do think I don't know. It was almost a pull. It is what it felt like. Like, this is really neat. The fact that I am getting information outside of a source that I was ever told that I could have information come
Yes, 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 yes.
from. This was right during my major transition from the church, um, and so it threw me off for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it couldn't
That,
not.
like, how I don't know. It was hard to reconcile at first, and it definitely took some time, but it's kind of fun to see where it's gone.
Yeah, I mean, because you're probably
um,
a totally different person.
oh, totally, completely different person. Personally,
Well,
I'm a little bit happier, but
thank thank the gods or the tarot or whomever
yes,
is
yeah.
poking you, um, literally and figuratively. Um, yeah, sorry, had to throw that one in there.
Good job.
So, how did you decide? So now you've had these, silent experiences in the Mormon religion that were touching, and now you've been pulled into this deck of cards that have so many meanings in them. How did you decide what deck called to you? Like, or did a deck call to you, or were you just like, I'm just going to jump in and start, and this is the deck I'm using?
Literally, I went to Barnes and Noble. I remember it distinctly. I felt so guilty about it. First off,
Of course you
um,
did. Of course you did.
uh, but I found a deck of cards in Barnes and Noble, and it was the Easy Tarot. And I'm like, okay, let's make this easy. Let's do this just the simplest way. Um, and then I fell in love with the artwork. And what's kind of funny is the artist, Ciro Marchetti, it was his deck. Um, what's funny is he has the Gilded Tarot, which is the upgraded version of that deck. And so when I felt ready, I just literally upgraded to the same artwork, just more stylized. And so I'm like, oh, this is easy. Um, and yeah, I that's how I picked my deck. I know there's some superstitions out there about you should never buy one deck for yourself. Um, I do believe it's a superstition, because Deck and I have had a very good relationship.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I was going to eventually ask you, how do you feel about that?
I think it's a superstition, and I do think that it may hold some validity for some people, but for me, that's not how it worked.
Well, and I think too, I was listening to, so when I was working at the Conjuring Tree, when you were gone on your luxurious cruise, um, I uh, was listening to people talk about their tarot cards, and I'm so, um, how do I say this nicely? If I never hear that phrase again, that someone has to gift you the deck, I will live a very happy life. Um, it's, I think too. So the one thing I started thinking about that day when I was working and people kept saying it, I'm like, why the fuck do we keep saying this? I just feel like there's something wrong. And then I kind of realized that I think it might be tied up in like the concept of hamingya in my worldview. Hamingya is kind of the power something has because someone else has placed value on it already. So somebody has like you've used your deck now for years, and if you were to ever gift that to someone, it has more power in it and
I
more
could see
magic
that.
to it, kind of thing. But beyond that, I just listen. If I want something, I go buy it, and I only buy. That's not entirely true. Most of the time, I buy tarot because of the artwork. I don't read tarot, but I buy it because of the artwork, and that's what calls to me.
Right. What I have found too is like there was a deck that I thought was really cool in the artwork. It was amazing. And so I ordered it for the store and then I got one for myself. I opened it up and I have zero connection to that deck. I can't make that deck work for me. I'm sure that you have similar issues, like there are tools that you'll end up buying for yourself, and you're just like, it doesn't work
Yeah,
for me.
correct. Yeah,
Um, I think very much that you have to have a connection to the tools you're working with. And if you don't have that connection, it's not going to work.
yeah,
And so when people say, oh, you should never buy your first tarot deck, um, for no judgment on them, that is something that is a possibility. For them, it may be that case.
you're nice.
But but for me, if you don't have a connection with the deck that he bought for you, you're still not going to read it. You're still not going to connect it. You're still not going to get out of it what you possibly could. Um,
Right.
and so I think that's really important to pay attention to is how do you connect to the item that you're working with? I think it's more important.
Agreed. Recently, that same 2 days I worked at your store, I really love um the I like oracle cards maybe a little better
Yeah.
than tarot because they're much more fluid. But the oh, Henry agrees with me. You hear him barking in the background. Um, he's barking at the cat. So the wild unknown archetypes
Uh-huh.
deck. Rarely do I feel the siren song of something, but I sat with it for 2 days that week before I'm like, fuck it, okay, come on, let's go. And there's such wisdom in that deck for me that
Absolutely.
I I really believe, but probably just as much as you do, that man, if it's calling to you, then and you know the difference between when you're getting a call and you're not getting a call, like you're making up, like we call it sock puppets versus
Mhm.
really getting a call.
I love doing the sock puppets when I'm having a conversation with people.
It's a great concept, right?
Uh-huh. It helps vocalize things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, um, how long ago was this first tarot deck for you? When did you get that?
I want to say 2017 or 18.
Nice. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
and you were a very young man. The
28, 29 years old. Not that young.
well, and that's like what? Right around, I have zero idea what I'm saying about this, so I might have to look it up. But it's right around your first complete cycle of one of your transits or something. It takes 28 to 29 to 30 years.
The Saturn return is what
Yes.
our design person
Yes, that's
told
yes.
us. And yes, it was right around then, probably within about 6 or 7 months when everything went to shit.
Yeah. Um so hey, what went to shit?
Oh, just the whole worldview that I had myself. Um, I couldn't fit back into the box anymore. I was tired. I was depressed, and so the box broke.
As it does.
And that's usually what happens. And so that's kind of what happened to me. is my box broke and I could no longer fit into it anymore. I could no longer be the salesman that people wanted me to be. I could no longer be the happy individual that people wanted me to be, because I was literally wearing a mask all the time.
And that is exhausting.
It is exhausting.
So,
Absolutely exhausting.
So I feel a bit like we touch the mysteries in the unknown.
Yeah.
And then it fucks your world up. And especially if it's a strong enough pull and you start following it, right? Like everything will fall apart just like you talked about. So how did you have help navigating that come apart from the mysteries, or like how did you navigate that?
When my whole world fell apart, I still had not figured out tarot. I had not figured out anything like that at the moment. So honestly, therapy was my go-to. That's how I worked through shit.
I love you. I love you. Thank you for saying
it was important for me to get the help that I needed, and that's how it came through.
That's good. I do think, well, I think you and I probably both tell people this. Thank you for coming to this spiritual guidance session. Please make sure that you call your therapist and schedule an appointment if you don't already have one, to help you navigate this.
That is definitely something I do frequently.
Unfortunately, we have to, because like I'm still breaking down all of the programming or concepts that were part of me, or how I was shaped in my early years within the context of the religion. You kind of got through the come apart a little bit. What kind of came out of the come apart? How did you, like, what things in your life changed, and how did you begin to navigate and worldview differently?
Oh goodness. Well, first off, I now husband.
Yes.
Who I absolutely adore, and that is probably the biggest that has come out of my fall apart. I've been able to, honestly. So for me, I worked 17 years in a medical field. That kind of helped with the fall apart. Like that kind of happened too. But having this outlet, being able to open up my store, being able to be creative and crafty with my witchiness, has helped me, or it helped me break away from that world. Um, it was another one of those obligations that I had set for myself. So learning how to break free from the obligation that everyone else has set for me, or have set for me myself because I thought that's what everyone else wanted, has been one of the biggest things. So learning how to break the bind, break the limits of what I always thought was possible, is something that has been big, that has come out of my fall apart.
Yeah, I love that. I think so much wisdom in having to go through that experience and come out on the other side. Like just come out on the other side, like not even thrive, not even, it's just about surviving that. And what are, kind of what are the things that we each individually learn from that. So I met you like 2018.
Pagan Pride 2018.
Yeah, because I will say Tate had met or had been in contact with you all, and I watched you two walk across the grass setting up your stuff, and I thought, those are like the magical dwarves or elves. Like what the fuck am I seeing? And I could just see your little magic trailing behind you. And I don't mean that diminishing at all, because it was like, it's this beautiful, like, trail of creative dust. Like you're so both of you are completely industrious as fuck, by the way. It exhausts me looking at what you do. Um, but the ability to create the things you create was part of the reason I fell in love with both of you in terms of what you do. And I personally have my fan still. I'm looking at it right now. And I have
Uh-huh.
a wand. So how what was the first thing you made after your like
Uh-huh.
coming out of your come apart? What was the first thing you made, or the first thing that you were inspired to make that was like, oh, I need
So
to do
that was
this?
actually Jeremy's doing. Um, I
Damn him.
absolutely love candlesticks. Candlesticks were the very first thing that we ever made, and it was
Oh,
from an oak log. We still have quite a few of them. Um, it literally started from a desire to make our own fall decor. That's where it started. Um, yeah, and then as soon as we started making like different types of candlesticks, we started researching the magical properties of the woods that we were working with. I will. So my husband is definitely the creative force behind things. He's the one who definitely engineers like ideas and stuff, and then I usually come up behind and just bust out a whole bunch of them. He thrives in his
nice.
creative process.
You, you and I've had a couple
Mhm.
conversations about that and how the dance works uh, between you two, and I think it's really um, fascinating
Yeah.
organism to watch. Like you, like the Conjuring Tree as
Uh
an organism is very fascinating to watch. Um, I fell in love with
huh.
like the scent. So that was. I mean, yes, I have my other
Of
tools
course.
that I've gotten from you, but sacred wood is one of the things that I think you all have made that is such a like a visceral experience for me.
It,
Um, how did that all come into
well,
play?
if we were making candlesticks, we needed to make candles.
That's a
So it
natural.
was it was
Yeah, I
very
see.
much a natural thing.
Okay.
Um, we definitely wanted more earthy or woodsy scents, and it definitely took some time for us to figure that out. Now this is where my husband comes in handy too, again because my sniffer don't work so well, never has, and so
Oh,
Jeremy does a lot of the scent creation. He has blended our sacred wood and then our mead hall scent. He's the one who came up with the recipe for that. I think it smells good. I think it smells
I love
awesome,
meat
but
hall.
I do much better with the actual making of the
Hmm.
candles. Uh, and I do better at that because of my time, I think, in a laboratory setting.
Mhm.
So I worked in the medical field for 17 years in a lab, and then I was able to like follow the recipe of what it looks like to make your own candles. And it is a recipe. It is time consuming, but it's fun. It's a really fun process to watch it all come together. Our house smells amazing every time I make candles
Nice.
for like days on
Wow.
end.
Um, where does or does, I mean, no judgment. I feel like there's some sort of connection to um or like some sort of stream you are standing in, like the stream of creation, whatever we want to call it. Is there, or how does that play into your creation or your fabrication? Do you have a set of like processes that, oh hey, I'm going to like ritually cleanse myself and then set sacred space and then we're going to create? Or do you feel like it's just more of a natural, you step into this and out of it quite easily?
It depends on what I'm doing. So for candles, it's a very natural. Let's just pull out the candles. Let's get the wax together. That's easy peasy. When I'm making my jars, I think it's a little bit different. I do try to approach those just a slightly different way, and I do try to approach it with the intent. And I do some cleansing using some incense. Um, for me, that's a very magical item I'm making for someone else, and I want to make sure that deserves my full attention. Whereas my candles are very much just delightfully scented candles,
Yeah. Okay.
which is a difference I think in the item that I'm making. When it comes to wands, um, so I make candles, I make wands. Those are kind of my and spell jars. Those are kind of my big things. When it comes to a wood or a wand, I definitely try to let the wood speak, and tell me what it's going to be. Um, what I have found is each piece of wood, each blank of wood that I work with is unique in its own personality.
Yeah.
And if I try to force an idea upon a wood, if I try to say, you are going to be this, 9 times out of 10, that wand is going to bust
It's a big fuck you.
as I'm making it. It,
Yeah.
it kind of,
Sorry.
and it's not my favorite thing in the world because it's like, I just put all this work into you, but okay,
Yeah.
whatever. That happened to me with an ebony wand the other day.
Oh
Ugh.
no.
Yeah, but it's okay. But that's so. I kind of let the wood speak to me for those spell jars. Yeah, I definitely try to do a little bit more like of ritual, and make sure that the area and the energy that I'm putting into those items is pure, and that's kind of what I try to do.
Cool. I feel like I want to go in this direction. So come along with me.
Okay.
Um, you went from this very kind of organized 9 to 5 life, right? Um, and how did the fall apart? And then, and now, not then, but now you've created this new life, which includes the Conjuring Tree, which is a wonderful store, a retail establishment that I would call it spiritual slash metaphysical store. How do you?
That's we call it a
Okay.
metaphysical store.
Um, Now your life, quite possibly. This is my question: is your life now like 24/7 spiritual, and or was it in the beginning of it? How do you see the balance of all that moving energy?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm still working on the balance. I think that's a
Yeah.
constant need, especially when you're a business owner. You spend almost all of your time devoted to the business because you want to make it work. You have to do all the new things to make sure that you're
Yep.
still relevant, and it can be very very difficult
Mm,
sometimes to make that
to say the least.
happen. So it's a constant need and a constant reminder that I have to take time for myself. Um, that reminder comes in the form of my husband. It comes in form of my part timers that I have working for me. Um, I am much told very frequently that, yeah, it's okay. We've got this. You don't have to be here all the
Which
time.
is really helpful. Uh,
It is really helpful, and I have really good people who help me
yeah,
do that.
nice. That was part of the problem with the retail establishment of Blue Antler was having it's okay and you have time to work the store, but then when you end up expanding your store hours, right, to 7 days a week,
Yeah,
we it's not a sustainable schedule for one person. So you then don't have time to do all the rest of this stuff or your own stuff.
that's exactly what we learned, and we're so grateful we have a really good group of people who are willing to help us just have a break once in a
It's
while.
nice. Now, I love that earlier you talked about the mundane things can be spiritual.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now that you do, not now, but now that you've been doing readings for quite a while for other people, what do you think? I don't want to lead you with this. Let me tell you what I think, and then you can respond. How about that? I feel like
Okay.
sometimes we put up a block and think that it's much harder to have a spiritual experience than it really is, and we overlook the small experiences we have every day that are connecting with the unknown or the mysteries. Like when I thought about putting together the ideas for the podcast, I started, writing it out. I want to talk to people who have touched the mysteries and how has that affected them? How has it affected their life moving forward? And I'm like, well, damn, that's everybody, or it should be able to be everybody. Yet we, not all of us, act upon that in terms of making spiritual more of a full-time gig. Um, when you're looking at and when you've done readings for people, you say, or you said earlier, it's interesting to have the person on the other side screaming at the person that you're reading for. They're just not getting the fucking message, and you're the bridge to give that. Um, yeah, like what have your experiences been? Do people get it? Like when you try and explain it, how has all of that also affected how you move forward with in spirit? I don't know if I want to put it that way, but
Well, let's chat first and foremost. One of the biggest reasons I see people not being able to find those spiritual moments in their life is the urge to produce. Um, we are definitely in a society where what you do dictates who you are. Unfortunately, we put so much of ourselves into what we're trying to do that we fail to remember who we are. We fail to remember and fail to see who we are. Um, and to be fully honest, that is a struggle that I have with the store too. Being immersed in the spiritual all day, um, sometimes it's hard to have those moments for myself. And so it's a reminder that I'm continually having to have. Um, my husband and I had a conversation about this not too long ago, but learning how to find the whimsy of our profession again is
I love
important for
that.
us. And I think part of the problem is definitely that we're in it so intensely all the time that we need to remember that we can have those whimsical moments too.
Agreed.
And I think that's
Yeah, I
important.
really like that. Thank you. I think that's an interesting perspective I hadn't necessarily had about it, is that we're so focused on what we produce. That's interesting. Thank you.
Oh, it we keep ourselves so busy. How do we have time
Yeah.
to slow ourselves down? When do we have time to really look at the
Yeah.
beautiful things? Looking at a flower growing for the first time in spring. Um, it's those little moments that are more magical, I think, than the big ritualistic moments that we make for ourselves.
So, what are some of your most recent brushes with the unknown that have, they don't have to have, had a major shift in you, but how do those moments seem to influence you?
I will say first, those moments manifest to me through the blunt words of my friends and my husband.
Okay, I can see that.
um, so having I'm this is still a process that I'm still working on for myself, is learning how to find my own whimsy, and that is like why that whole conversation happened, is like learning how to figure that out. Some of the more like powerful moments that I've had um, have have happened as I've been trying to like reconnect or kind of connect bigger to my own gift. Um, I'm trying to narrow these down. I did have a conversation with one of our readers. Um, and I'm like, okay, I haven't had like any sort of communication with my spirit guides. How can I have better conversation with my spirit guides? Throughout our conversation with this reader, so I'm like, okay, let's have a chat. Let's sit down and see if we can figure this out. Throughout that reading, um, at some point, I heard a very distinctive laugh from my crew.
It's unsettling.
The laugh was, well, yes, it's unsettling in the fact that I knew exactly what that message was, and the message was is why do you even need to have like know who we
Yeah.
are? I had learned that I was getting information, messages, images, whatever it is, I'm getting it. So why do I need to know who they are? Honestly, I came out of that realizing that I don't necessarily need to know who they are. I just need to be grateful that they're there.
I think that's a really interesting thing because it's what we're asked a lot from other people. Um, yeah. Okay.
And so
Cool.
for me personally, on my own spiritual journey, it's not necessarily something I've absolutely needed to have. Was this direct connection to a very particular spirit guide, um, and it's been okay. I haven't needed that. Now, this is not to say that everyone else's pattern should be just like my pattern, because everyone's journey is definitely
Right.
their own, and there are certain individuals who need a spirit guide, need that distinct form, and that is great. It's just not something I've absolutely needed. Um, as long as I know that I am getting messages from beyond or from the other side, it works for me. The One of the other things that I intend that I love to do, I'm in a very unique position where I get to touch that little stream, as we've called it, on the other side frequently. Almost on the daily, I will get prompted to be like, do I need to say something to this individual about what I'm feeling for them? Um, there are times where the answer is absolutely yes. The other times, no. um, and then I'm learning a better code of ethics for myself where I do ask someone before I try to dive into their energy, unless it's been hit. Like every once in a while, like spirit will be like, here, have this. Like it'll hit you over the head with it. Not wanting it, but or not like meaning to intrude, but you definitely get that happening. But I am learning like a code of ethics is like, does this person even want to hear what I have to say? If so, then I have permission to dive into their energy and see what I can see. Um, One of my favorite things to do at the store is someone will come in with a problem or an issue and just, okay, let's talk about this for a second. Let's dive into your energy. Let's see where the actual problem is lying. And then maybe I can recommend a product or two for you. That would be great. But also, I may not even have the product that you're looking for. I may not even have what you need at the moment. And that's okay by me too. But I get to share that experience with the customers. And it's just a really fun and exciting moment for me to work through. Um, I don't know. It's kind of a fun little experiment to play with my customers as I'm working through everything. So I get lucky. I get to see it every day. I get to see those little nudges every day and feel them every day, and it's awesome.
And and it helps you to be able to differentiate between when it's the stream and when it's the other and
Uh
when
huh.
it's not.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
which is I think that's too like I think when I was in there the other day and I read for a young woman, um, that was exactly what the reading was about, was okay, building kind of the foundation and also creating a profile for what it looks like, feels like, smells like, all of that information when she was getting information from the other side, not necessarily um, for, you know, for her, but whatever she was tapping into, like, what does it feel like? Because it has a very different feel and a different, I call it a profile for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, and it just, I love that you're having all of these experiences, because it just helps solidify what that feels like. And then once you have that baseline too, that's when everything starts to grow. Like you were talking about earlier with it started with this, and then it turned into, oh, it works really well if I can touch it, if I can feel it, hold it in my hand. And then it's like, oh, now I hear conversations, because you can't just build, you can't live on on the penthouse level without building all the levels before it.
I agree. You need to have a foundation of what that feels like.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. What do you see for yourself moving down the pipe? Like what what do you see? What do you want?
Um, First off, I am very excited to keep playing. One of the things that I absolutely love doing is building spells for people. Building the idea of like, this is what we can do to make a certain outcome happen. Um, and so I'm excited to build that up a little bit more. Within the next few years, I definitely want to take some classes on herbology. I would love to incorporate that into my craft. Um, and then for sure, within the next year, I will be teaching tarot. I want to teach people how to touch that for themselves, and I think that would be fun. I already do it most of the time anyway, so I might as well just make it official.
Yeah, agreed.
um, I want to be able to share a lot of what I've learned with other people. I think that would be really great. I'm very, very excited for all the new products and new ideas that I'm having. I just want to play, honestly, because
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, my gift really didn't start like growing until I turned off the ego of my brain and started playing in the stream. And it's more fun to just, I don't know. I think magic should be fun. I think a lot of people, when they come to me, they're like always so serious. It's always so deep. It's always so heavy, when it doesn't always have to be. I think sometimes people like put too much pressure on themselves to have a very specific outcome for certain things, when just go play, go see what the universe has in store for you and just enjoy it. And I think that's where I want to go, is I just want to enjoy it a little bit more and just learn how to share that with other people.
Any final words?
uh
You don't have to have
Honestly,
any, by the way.
I know, but if I were going to tell people something that I have noticed very, very frequently in a lot of my readings, give yourself a fucking break. Stop taking life so seriously. Stop trying to force the universe to be a very specific way, and just start enjoying life as it is. There is so much good around you that I think a lot of people fail to see. And so I just want you to just start enjoying your life as it is, and then move to where you want to be. Stop waiting for life. I don't know. So often people are just waiting for life to get bad. And I don't want to see that no more. So give you guys yourself a break. That's what I want to say.
So, what did you think? I hope there were moments in that conversation that inspired you, that maybe mm, caused some memories to come flooding back. Maybe that's a good way to put it. I know that in that conversation, I made several notes for myself of really great things and great perspectives that Andy brought up or talked about. And I'm very grateful for the time he spent with me in this interview. If you are interested, the Conjuring Tree has a website, which will be linked in the show notes. If you're in the northern Utah area and wish to come by and get a tarot reading from Andy at the Conjuring Tree, go ahead and contact them through their Facebook or their website. And also be on the lookout for all the classes scheduled. I believe you're going to have to RSVP to those. So, great times. It's a great place. It just feels very, very at home, very comfortable. So, if you're able to, please check it out. Drop by, say hi to Andy, and tell him that you heard him and loved his conversation on Blue Antler, Whispered Secrets and Hidden Wisdom. Until next time.